Ladies and gentlemen, may I present to you Ada Mazi of the ancient Arachukwu kingdom. Yes, I am deadly serious. It beggars belief, doesn't it? Beggars belief. Rachel Ragland has been crowned Ada Mazi of the ancient Arachukwu kingdom. This apparently translates to daughter of an aristocrat. Is that you they're talking about, Thomas Markle Sr.? Daughter of an aristocrat. Really? Really? We are going to come to all of this in a moment, and we are going to look over the three kings of Africa that have crowned this daughter of an aristocrat. Ada Mazi, or should I say Mademoiselle. We are going to look over that in a moment, but I want to start with a royal refresher because there are more important things to deal with, including the appearance of Harriet Spurling. Harriet Spurling makes her press debut this week in her role as the lover of Peter Phillips. Indeed, Harriet replaces Lucky Lindsay Wallace. She had her time, her luck was in, but Lady Luck has gambled away, and she has been replaced by Harriet as the flame and confidant to the lusted after first grandson of the late Queen Liz. Harriet Spurling is a paediatric nurse and a freelance writer and a Christian. She is a single mother, and the cosy pair were seen strolling hand in hand over the weekend at the badminton horse trials, and they watched cross-country horse riding for a spot from the tent of a sponsor and then departed in a vehicle with Savannah and Isla. So she's been introduced to the gals and to the family, and even Queen Camilla, who was at the horse trials as well. And she has written in the past about how her faith in God helped her raise her daughter, and also she's received a lot of praise from parents of children that she's helped to save, and she's been called an NHS hero in the past. And she's worked with Evelinas, who we've donated to, and we know about and we hear about through all the royal workings of Catherine and such, and she's worked with them, and so she sounds like a delightful young lady, and we wish her all the best, don't we, my dear? Good luck with Pizza. Pizza? Oh dear. Pizza Phillips. Is that going to be his new name henceforth? Pizza Phillips. No, our dear Pizza, our cosy, lush, comfy, springy armchair that looks so welcoming and inviting. And she's getting all of that warm embrace, isn't she, dear Harriet? She can carry it away with her. Harriet will carry it. Yes, she will. By the way, if you're wondering why I'm wearing such a creased, crumpled up top, this is how it comes. But I picked it up from one of my charity shops that you kindly help fund my purchases for the charity shops through the tip jar, don't you, my dear? Well, I used one of your tip jar treats to purchase this for a few quid. This was a couple of months ago. It's just been sitting there because it looks so crumpled that I thought, it's a little bit too much. But guess what? The Duchess of Sussex has been telling us that crumpled up nude items of clothing are in vogue and the fashion. So I thought, why not roll with it, my dear? Do you think that I can pull it off with any kind of aplomb, or do I look like a box of rags, just like Rachel Ragland and her husband? I'll leave that quiz with you, and I won't be offended. But it is an oystery sort of gold. I like the colour, actually, and I rather liked the glitter, the sort of sequin effect around the throat. But as I say, Peter and Harriet were having a nice cosy conversation with Queen Camilla because she attended the final day of the badminton horse trials, which was celebrating the 75th anniversary of the event. And the horse trials were established in 1949, and they are one of 7 5-star equestrian events in which horses and riders compete against each other in 3 phases: dressage, cross-country and show jumping. They're intended to prepare riders for the Olympic Games. and the Queen was wearing a Samantha Sung Astor midi in royal blue and a taupe crossbody handbag by Charlotte Elizabeth. But we must return to Nigeria, the scene of the crime, where Meghan has been honoured as Ada Mazi of the ancient Arachaku kingdom. And 3 kings were in attendance for this ceremony, this pantomime. And I will caveat this by saying that I have every respect for the people of Nigeria, for the traditions and the ancient royalty of Nigeria. So when I'm laughing along, it is not at these traditions and the history at all, because there is so much beauty in all of that and the people. But you understand, my dear, I'm laughing at the fact that they are honouring them and choosing to honour them. And I'm afraid that as much as I respect the kings or the various names that they have for the royal characters in Nigeria, past and present, it doesn't mean that I respect individuals or individual kings who turn up to honour these 3. Now, many of the people in Nigeria who've been roped into this by the government are doing it because they actually think that it is a gracious way to respond to King Charles and to honour his children. Don't forget that, because King Charles has fabulous relations with Nigeria and its head of state, and he received them all since his reign began and gets on with them famously, and a lot of them speak very highly of him. So it is not always a diss to King Charles. It is sometimes a misplaced sense of affection that they rock up to honour Ada Mazi. But a big meal has been made about these so-called 3 kings who are in attendance. It was like a stable in Bethlehem, by all accounts. Is this a princess they are crowning, or the second coming? That's the quiz. You might have been told, by the way, if you've been reading the press or watching various news reports, that these kings rarely leave their homes, and that this was a very special, particular exception being made for this special event, for this princess of their ancient kingdoms. But this is a lie. This is a lie, my dears. And we'll look at that in a moment. But for now you can see the golden sash bearing her title and her insignia. And if you're anything like me, you might be wondering how the gal can stand there. How she can stand there, in all seriousness, lapping up this sort of adulation without dying of cringeworthy embarrassment. Cringeworthy. Cringeworthy the whole thing is. Because what has she achieved? Yes, they're working with their charities and doing stuff for Invictus, but it's certainly not in any royal unsung capacity. It's this publicity-strong privacy tour, this whirlwind tour that we're all being subjected to. And of course, this will all have been prearranged and organised, and I'm afraid that if Harry and Meghan had any sort of humility and any sort of real royal attitude channeling through their veins, then they would have declined. They would have declined because they are not a representative of the king. They are not official ambassadors or dignitaries. And it's another case of Meghan shuffling a few files around on her work experience in Argentina and then claiming that she was part of the ambassadorial cavalcade and was more or less Eva Peron. And everybody was hailing her as Evita, and she was waving to her descomisados draped in fur. It's another replaying of that. You are the wife of a second son, who is no longer attached to royalty. On holiday, while he is propagating propaganda for his work, some of it worthy, some of it not. The shine is rubbing off on you as much as you can muster, and you're milking it for all it's worth. It should have been declined, this honour should have been declined, because she should know that she's not worthy of it, to be quite frank. And then we haven't had a chance to discuss her appearance at the polo game, where she played polo wife, and we'll be seeing a lot more of that in the forthcoming Netflix series. And the dress was called Summer Counts, some accounts by Johanna Ortiz, and I will say that I know that it didn't go down very well with observers, but I didn't mind it actually. I thought it was okay. It's not something that I'd slip into, but I didn't mind it, and I quite liked the shimmering effect of the colours and the tones, and it looked rather relaxed, but I didn't think that it was in harmony with the other spectators that she was mixing with at all. And again, bare arms and shoulders the whole time, and I'm no kind of prude. I don't really care one way or the other about honouring modesty, to be honest. Obviously, if she was there in an official royal capacity, one would expect her to honour the modesty of the location. But, I'm not that kind of prude, but it was very plunging, very plunging. Not that she has cleavage to display, but it was too plunging for my taste, and too much arm and too much skin. It wasn't necessary. But neither of them, to be honest with you, Lovey, neither of them, Harry and Meghan, are a tailor's dream. And you know who are a tailor's dream, who Savile Row are clamouring for, and that is the Prince and Princess of Wales. Yes, strapping Big William can fill out a suit beautifully, and it's cut and it's clean, as you will see later, and doesn't look like a great big fraggly mess, some sort of scrotum on stilts. And then there's Meghan, a box of rags. Catherine, of course, a model, a delight to dress. Everything hangs. She is a hanger like me. Everything looks splendid, falls right, just right. They have the ideal proportions. So it's unfair. What I'm saying is that it's actually unfair to compare apples and oranges, isn't it, my dear? And I did see Miss and Harriman popping up, their photographer, so they dispatched him to come along with them as part of their entourage. But for the tour that's been touted as very, very private and very, very discreet, and they don't want anybody's attention, they don't want the world to know about this. So they've brought along their photographer together with their security to ensure that their privacy is maintained at all times. You couldn't make it up. So, from the three kings of Orient to three kings of Nigeria. As I say, I have every respect for their traditions, but I feel it is my duty to put things into perspective. And I have no special criticism for any of these three characters. From what I've read so far, they all sound like upstanding citizens with very busy lives, successful careers, and involvement in a lot of Nigerian business. But it is their powers of discernment and their abilities to judge that might now be called in question from some quarters for having involvement in this. But they all sound like decent, wonderful gentlemen. The first we'll look at is this character Alfred Achibe in the red headwear, and he is Obi of Onitsha, and apologies in advance for anything that I don't pronounce correctly. Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi of Onitsha. Obi, I think, is one of the words that means king, or points in that direction, but the word king isn't really used to describe him from what I can see. He's a traditional leader of Onitsha, Anambra State, southeast Nigeria, and he's viewed as a representative of the people to the state and federal levels of government, and he works in oil, including at Shell International, all over the world, and including London actually. And you might see in a moment this is a recurring theme, but he works in oil, he's got a busy life in business, and he's on the board of directors of Unilever Nigeria, and they go by the title His Royal Majesty, the Royal Majesty, the Obi, His Royal Majesty, the Obi in his case. So that's a little bit about his background. The next one is Enga Eberechukwu, OG. And surprise, surprise, he is an engineer in oil and gas. I used to work in this industry, by the way. For a small while we might have rubbed shoulders. And no, that doesn't mean I was pumping gas at a petrol station before anybody suggests it. But as for claims that he is a king, in this case, I find that it is stretching the imagination a little bit. His father, Prince Joshua, is the third son of a former king, or former Easy Arrow, I think is the terminology, a former Easy, E-Z-E, a former king. But it doesn't say anything about him being the king himself, just a descendant, a third son. And then in the orange headwear, this handsome gentleman, isn't he? I thought he's rather pretty gentleman. Great Olu of Warri Kingdom. He is the great Olu of the Warri Kingdom, W-A-R-R-I. Once went by the name Tsola Imiku, and is also known as Ogiami Atuotsi III. And he had a coronation. From what I can tell, he is the most eminent of the three. Hope that's not controversial to say, but he appears, from what I can find, to be the most eminent and most known. He attended the Thanksgiving service for Commonwealth Day. King Charles's came for that. Appears to approve of them and like them very much. And this is what I say when perhaps some of these have been roped into these proceedings, thinking that it's something that His Majesty would approve of, when perhaps it's something that they would more likely laugh about and cover their eyes for shame and say, "Oh, good, Harry again, Harry again." He became the 21st Olu of the Warri Kingdom, and it's got quite an interesting history. I looked through the chronology, and guess what he works in as well? Oil and gas, including for Shell. So I'm not sure what these three kings came bearing, whether it was gold, frankincense or myrrh, but I think it was more likely to be oil. Perhaps some olive oil for the orchard, or some gas-guzzling type of oil that Harry can stick in his private jets before he marks off his travel list checklist. But all three of these kings, movers and shakers in the world of oil and gas, and they moved and they shook to make sure that they were there to crown the new princess of Nigeria. Well, all I can say in regards to that is curiouser and curiouser. Now, what's this username? Ajedinad XX left a comment saying, how on gay earth she's 43% Nigerian. She had a full documentary about being Maltese and filmed it in Malta, looking for her alleged ancestors. Then she used to be identified as Caucasian in her CV, her college paper, etc. She's a big old fraud. Well, my dear, as it happens, I've never disclosed my racial mix or my heritage, and people assume all the time, and you might be forgiven for assuming that I'm a white Caucasian, but others might say that that is a racist assumption, an unconscious bias that you've got just because you look at me and think that you can detect what race I am. How dare you? How dare you? Racists, bigots. The fact is, my dear, despite what you may see, for example, I'm darker than Prince Archie of Sussex and Prince of Sussex. I'm darker than them, most likely. And they must have some percentage of Nigerian in them. And I know, before anybody leaves a pedantic comment, that Nigerian is not a race, but you know exactly what I'm talking about and what I mean. But I have no doubt that that percentage has been calculated and reported back to Grandma Doria. What can we do with this information? We all have strands and bloodlines that we can follow, don't we, my dears? All of us have an exotic ancestry and lineage that we could refer to if we wanted to, and if we wanted to go back to the dawn of time. And natural curiosity takes some of us there. These days we have means at our disposal to be able to look into this. But the difference is, my dear, that we don't expect to rock up in the country that one of our great cousins, 18 times removed, sprang from, and expect to receive a ritual, a rite, a religious ceremony, and the keys to an ancient kingdom. We don't expect that, do we, my dears, you and I? But the likes of the Harkles and the Harkledom, everywhere they go, they expect the same sort of adulation and the same sort of interest. They are so interested, particularly Meghan. Who am I? Where did I come from? Well, this is all because her great-great-grandmother was born in Malta in 1862. And Meghan visited it. As you say, my dear, she visited Malta in 2015, a year before she met Harry. And she said, and this is like deja vu, she said, there is something so lovely about fitting in a piece of the puzzle. This trip was mostly about trying to understand where I came from, my identity. You came from Thomas Markle and Doria Ragland, lover girl. You came from Tom Markle and Doria Ragland out of Canoga Park, LA, California. And perhaps that's why your identity that you're so curious about is pure Hollywood. And just like the Walk of Fame, is that what it's called, the Walk of Fame? I've forgotten now. I've been there, of course, but just like that Walk of Fame, the Hollywood stars, it's got a reputation for being all glitzy and glamorous and shiny, as is that whole area of Hollywood. But if you've ever been there, as I have, you'll know that it's a complete shithole. It's a shithole! It's full of beggars and tramps and thieves and the fuzzy end of the lollipop. And it's a lesson in all that glisters is not gold, my dear. All that glisters is not gold. Except for me. But yes, everything that this Malteser went on about was like deja vu. Exactly what we're getting in Nigeria this week. Before I came, people were telling me, when you go to Malta, everyone will look like you. And I started to say, oh my gosh, I do sort of blend in. As if she'd ever be happy blending in. And it's the loveliest feeling. Trotting out the same lines. Whichever country she goes to and claims she belongs to. And there was even a photograph of her wearing the Onella national headdress. Really, it's pantomimical, isn't it, my dear? It is pantomime. Wherever she lays her hat, that's her home. King Charles III arrived at the Army Aviation Centre in Middle Wallop in Hampshire to attend a special ceremony with Prince William, officially handing over command of Prince Harry's former regiment, and in hues of grey and blue with diagonal stripes, the monarch bestowed the prestigious position of Colonel-in-Chief of the Army Air Corps to his heir. He unveiled a plaque which was enrobed in blue velvet. His Majesty has held the post for 31 years and was met by a guard of honour before mixing with veterans and their families and serving air crew. He also revealed that he lost his sense of taste during treatment when he was in conversation with a veteran who underwent chemotherapy and had a similar experience. No sense of taste? Well, it's probably the ideal moment to sample your daughter-in-law's jam. His Majesty handed the Prince of Wales an Army Air Corps beret and belt and told the crowds that William was a very good pilot indeed, and it was a treat to see our Big Willie and future King dressed like Action Man as he was briefed on his new duties and his new role as Colonel-in-Chief. Thank you very much for your company, your comments, your good humour, and to anybody who has sent a tip jar treat my way. See you next time, my dears. Have a nice evening and take care. Toodle pip.